Leaders face tough decisions all the time, but sometimes those tough decisions get pushed to the bottom of the to-do list. We all know that feeling, procrastination. Today we're talking about why delaying that difficult stuff in leadership is a recipe for disaster and how to tackle those challenges head on. Now, I get it. Difficult conversations, performance reviews, or addressing team conflicts aren't exactly fun. But here's why we often procrastinate about these things. The fear of the unknown. The potential for negativity or conflict can be daunting. When I previously stepped into a new leadership role, I felt like every day I was facing a new challenge and something that was quite daunting for me. And it created quite a lot of anxiety in my first weeks of the new job, until I identified that actually it wasn't the tasks themselves that were creating this anxiety, it was the unknown. It was the feeling that I hadn't known the organisation for long enough to understand how it worked, or the processes that I would need to go through to deal with each of these unexpected challenges. We often procrastinate about those difficult things when we don't really know how to go about it or what the outcome might be. It can also be due to emotional aversion. Difficult conversations can be emotionally charged, and we often avoid them to protect ourselves. Emotional aversion refers to the dislike or avoidance of certain emotions. It is a natural human tendency to want to feel good and avoid negative emotions like sadness, anger, fear, or anxiety. While experiencing a range of emotions is quite healthy, emotional aversion can become quite problematic when it leads to avoiding situations or behaviours that might trigger these emotions. Other times we procrastinate as we hope it's going to go away. Sometimes we naively hope that the issue will just magically disappear or resolve itself if we just leave it for long enough. Now, spoiler alert, it doesn't usually happen that way. Procrastinating on the tough stuff only makes it worse because it creates festering problems. Unaddressed issues grow over time, often becoming more complex and harder to solve. I remember a situation that I had when I came into a team for the first time and ran my first all of the team meeting, which was online with about 80 people. I was pretty nervous about just running the meeting itself, and the fact it would be the first time I'd interacted with most of them. But we were also dealing with a bit of a challenge around work hours and negotiating with the unions around this too. And straight away in the meeting, a union rep put into the online chat a question about that whole work hours issue that we were still trying to navigate. Obviously, all 80 people could see it. One of my other leaders was talking through a slide at the time when the message popped up in the chat, but I knew straight away that I needed to deal with that head on. As if I ignored it or left it unaddressed, it would just swell into a bigger issue, as everyone would assume that we were going to ignore it, and potentially more people could weigh in on it in the chat. So as soon as my leader had finished speaking, I quickly raised the question that had been put into the chat and responded the best way that I could without creating a big issue of it right then, which would take over the meeting, and offering to chat with that individual after the meeting. It definitely made me feel very uncomfortable, as I wasn't sure how everyone would respond, as I was very new to this team, and I wasn't sure if this would then create a whole big other chat going on in the meeting. But I suspected that this was also a bit of a test for my leadership, given it was the first meeting that I'd held in the role. But fortunately my instincts paid off and I squashed it. But it really highlighted to me the importance of taking on those really uncomfortable conversations or challenges as early on as you can. The other thing about procrastination is that it can erode trust. If you avoid difficult conversations, your team loses trust in your leadership. So perhaps if I'd ignored that question in the chat, the team would assume that I wasn't prepared to answer the tough questions and not respect my leadership. But the other thing to be mindful of is that stress builds. So the longer you delay, the bigger the burden becomes, which can lead to increased stress and anxiety. Now, for those of you who are new to my channel, I'm Nikki. I've been in leadership for over 17 years and have gone from leading just 2 people to leading leaders of large teams. Now back to ditching the procrastination. So here's how to tackle the tough stuff. Firstly, prioritise the difficult. Acknowledge the importance of the issue, even if it's just to yourself, and schedule a time to address it. Frequently, things will just pop up in leadership, and you get a bit of an instinct when something comes up and you know it's going to be significant. I get a bit of a feeling in my stomach which says, uh-oh, this is going to be a bit of a doozy. I need to deal with this situation and get on top of it quickly. That feeling tells me by instinct that this is my first sign that I need to prioritise dealing with this situation and start taking action. I do this firstly by preparation. Gather information, plan your approach, and anticipate potential challenges. So perhaps it's a staff issue where someone has done something significant that is against policy or your code of conduct, and you need to tackle it. You want to start by getting all the facts. Make sure you're clear on what you know and what challenges could come up so that you're ready for them. And think about what else you need to action it. Perhaps you need to consult with an employment relations advisor if you have one in your organisation. Or perhaps you need to give your manager a heads up, just in case. Then start focusing on solutions. Shift your mindset from identifying problems to finding solutions and how you're actually going to deal with this situation and the steps that you're going to take and the timeline to resolve it. Then it's into the communication, which should always be clear and direct. If you need to have a sit down with somebody or communicate something to everybody, make sure that you're being really clear and direct and empathetic if you need to be in the situation. Lastly, make sure that you're focused on the positive outcome. So the positive outcome could be that I've addressed it really quickly and it didn't get any worse. And also, I dealt with this really difficult conversation or this difficult challenge and I didn't procrastinate about it and make it worse through my procrastination. Now, ideally, we wouldn't need to procrastinate because our leadership path would be smooth. However, that really isn't reality. So here's how to create a culture of open communication so difficult issues are more likely to be raised and can be dealt with quickly. Firstly, set the example. Be open and direct in your own communication style. It's important that you are leading the way, showing the way, and presenting yourself as you want others to behave. So you're doing what you say. I have done a video, which is linked on the screen, on how everyone is watching, which goes into this also. To create a culture of open communication, you also need to make it psychologically safe for your team. This is about fostering a safe space where people feel comfortable to raise concerns. This means that everyone feels that they can be heard and you're not shutting anything down, so they feel they can express their opinion. You may need to seek out individuals for feedback so that you ensure that you're hearing them if you don't think that they are contributing openly. It's important that you hear from your team and that they feel safe to communicate. You can also encourage proactive problem solving. This is about encouraging a culture where you're seeking solutions rather than dwelling on problems. You can foster this within your own team by asking them if they're bringing you an issue, how they would solve it if they were you, or what they think the right solution would be to help solve it. If you do this enough times with your team, they'll quickly start coming to you with solutions as well as the issue, and really fostering that culture of being problem solvers. These 3 things, leading by example, encouraging everyone to speak up, and proactive problem solving, really create a culture of open communication. Difficult situations are inevitable, but by taking action and fostering open communication, you can transform these into times of team development and growth, creating a space where you're less likely to procrastinate over these difficult things and actually take action. Because the consequences of not taking action are usually that the problem gets worse. And if you want to be a leader that others follow and are inspired by, you want to be someone that's taking action. Don't forget to subscribe for more leadership tips. And thanks very much for watching.